Welcome into Sports Memo's betting podcast, March Madness style. We're talking the NCAA tournament with Teddy covers. We're going to be breaking down some Thursday, March 21st games from a Vegas perspective. Also get a couple opinions on maybe a sleeper team to win it from Teddy. But Teddy, without further ado, welcome into the podcast. How you doing?
Hey, Drew, man, I'll tell you what. It is one of the funnest times of the year for any bettor. It's one of the most exciting times of the year of any bettor. It's also one of the most exhausting times of the year for any bettor. You know how it is, man. It's been balls to the wall for the last 2 weeks. We've got, the opening weekend of the tournament this weekend, and obviously this is going to be a time. I mean, I got, there's people in town, there's media commitments, but the bottom line is we got to focus on the games and focus on picking winners. So hopefully we can help you with that on today's podcast. We break down some of these Thursday matchups.
Absolutely. Teddy, great time to be alive. Great time to be a sports bettor. And for the podcast, we do have a special coupon code. Teddy has been hot of late, hitting well into the 60s in terms of all plays in March. Last night just had his 5% winner on the Brooklyn Nets. Cash right side the whole time, Teddy. Now, actually, it came in.
Never in doubt, right?
Oh,
my goodness.
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
It speaks volume because the Nets were not a right side last night. They rallied from 25 down in the fourth quarter, which is something that happened 4 times in the shot clock era since 1955. So clearly I got lucky. But when you're running good, and it's been great in March, I think it's 68% all sports in March. When you're running good, you win games like that, And last night the Nets made a run. I'm like, we better pay attention here, man. It's not over yet. And it's so funny. You look at your Twitter timeline and the clients are like, Teddy, you idiot. Teddy, you jerk. By the end of the game, you're like, oh, my God, Teddy, I love you. So that's just the nature of the business. But, yeah, I got real lucky last night. But it's been an excellent month. College, NBA, across all sports, the clients seem to be pretty happy right about now.
Well, great stuff, Teddy. And glad it cashed. And you have been running good. We got you're hitting 68% in March, 64% college hoops, so 18-9 run to close it out last year. So March has been your time in terms of the tournament, NIT, whatever action you're talking. So Teddy Covers is a great choice on sportsmemo.com, and we got a coupon code here, COVERS, COVERS. 199. That's covers 199 at checkout for Teddy's 30-day all-access pass for just $199. That will give you the next 30 days any play Teddy releases. That's the new football league, all college basketball, all NBA. We got opening day, eight-ish days away, so you get all his baseball plays as well for just $199. That's $126 off the retail price using that coupon code COVERS199. COVERS 199 at checkout for his 30-day all-access pass. Teddy, let's start off with a Thursday game here. 12:40 Eastern, 9:40 a.m. Pacific tip. Yale, LSU. We got the Ivy League versus the SEC. A high total here, 157 at bookmakers, seeing -7.5 or -7. That's the LSU Tigers laying in this one. How are you looking to bet Yale versus LSU?
Well, it's been all Yale money. And when I say all Yale money, I mean, I was talking with a couple of bookmakers yesterday, and they're like, oh, my God, this is the most public side that we have right now. I'm like, Yale, really? I'm like, yeah, Yale, really. The markets are struggling to get people to bet on LSU. And obviously, when we're talking about a program with a lot of off-court distractions, LSU certainly high on the list with head coach Will Wade suspended and NCAA investigations and all kinds of off-court issues for LSU. What that isn't is LSU players getting suspended, LSU point guard getting hurt, LSU big man. No. This has been an elite team all season. This is the best year for the SEC that I can remember. Certainly the best year for the SEC in any recent season, and LSU was a big part of that. And the markets with the money come in, and look, from a statistical standpoint, there's really not that much of a comparison. On the defensive end, LSU is the superior team. On the offensive end, they don't quite have Yale's numbers for efficiency, but they didn't play an Ivy League schedule either. LSU makes free throws. LSU is big in the low post. They can dominate the boards. And you look at Yale. I mean, Yale, an impressive run to win the Ivy League tournament last weekend. And certainly everyone watched the game where they blew out Harvard in the second half and hit pretty much every shot in that contest. Back-to-back strong offensive efforts against Princeton and Harvard, but there's a little bit of a different defensive animal. And as this line continues to tick down, I understand the off-court distractions. But LSU's the better of these two teams, and maybe by margin, I could only lay with the Tigers in this one. I'm not. I mean, I understand it's an issue, but when you grade out personnel here, it's not really that close. This feels more like a double-digit win than it does a down-to-the-wire competitive contest, although you know how these tournament games go, Drew. A lot of times you'll see a team race out to a lead, and then all of a sudden the other guys will come back. You don't see a lot of quit from the losers, especially a team like Yale, who's rallied from behind repeatedly this season. But I just don't think they're capable of hanging tough for 40 minutes and hanging within this range for the LSU Tigers.
Yeah, Teddy, I mean, I guess you could make the argument that the back door would be open, an up-and-down game, and Yale isn't going to quit, as most of these teams aren't. Do you think that there's something, though, and I think you were kind of touching on it, as far as like a public underdog, a trendy underdog, so to speak, being not really the right side, and like you said, a lot of the sportsbook directors saying this is the most public side, does that scare you in itself?
Yes. But again, I mean, when it comes to public, all right, there's this... The public has no impact on these lines. They have no impact on the results. So I can understand you want to make a contrarian play. You better find another rationale besides I want to fade the public for getting on a play. And you better find another rationale besides, I mean, it's something to consider. It's not something to overwhelm you and to overwhelm all the other factors in your handicap. It's just one piece of the puzzle. And frankly, going through, I went through a bunch of consensus numbers for round one, and there's a little bit, there's not a lot in terms of the public's loading up on this side. So, and this is an instance where the public saw Yale probably for the first time last weekend, and they've been reading headlines about LSU. It's natural and normal to expect the money to flow the way it's flowed in this game. Is that the reason? If you're taking LSU, the reason to take them is not, the public's on Yale. It's, oh my God, this line's down to 7, and LSU's a lot better than that team.
No, great breakdown, Teddy. I agree with you. And you said you go to check the percentage of bet. Where do you check that normally?
Oh, there's a handful of sites that I use. I don't want to give out competitors' names on air, but there's plenty of good public consensus sites, and even on the Don Best website, I'll have it when if you're looking for lines there. But there, I gave out a competitor's name.
Don Best is fine, but
there are competitors. Damn it!
And I had a follow-up question for that. Is the percentage of bets fine? Do you trust when they post money percentages on each?
No,
side
I don't trust any of it. That's why I check multiple sources.
Okay.
Yeah. When I mean, basically, it's not anything that I'm spending a lot of time with. About the quick 3 windows. Oh, is there any disaster here? Is there an 80% on all 3 sites? And shit, I better talk myself out of this play. That sort of thing. I'm using it as an eliminator, not as a bet on. If I see, I like this, and I go 1, 2, 3, all 3 sites are 75% plus, and then now I'm, maybe take a step back from that play. But it doesn't happen a lot.
Okay. Yeah, no, good point. I just wanted to I like to ask people that question because as I've talked to more sportsbook directors and sportsbooks, especially the offshores, I haven't found one that will share percent of money. That's why whenever I see it on a website, I'm always a little skeptical because there aren't a lot of them that like to give that out. We got a 3:10 Eastern tip here, 12:10 Pacific. Belmont, Maryland in the 11-6 matchup, Teddy. And Belmont just won last night, and they looked good doing it, beating a pretty talented Temple team in themselves. We got 146.5 being the total. -3, that's the Maryland Terps kind of stumbling here into the tournament, Teddy. How are you looking to bet Belmont, Maryland?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of things to like about this Belmont squad. And, they were a fairly hyped team coming into the tournament. They got an at-large bid because they deserved an at-large bid. And obviously last night with a very impressive offensive showing against Fran Dunphy's Owls in Dunphy's last game as Temple's head coach. That being said, Maryland's a lot tougher than Temple. But Maryland is young. And you want to talk young? I mean, they were a freshman-laden team. They played all their best basketball in College Park this season, not away from home. Repeatedly struggled, especially when stepping up in class on the highway. And that's, again, fairly typical of young squads. If it comes to a game where Belmont is clicking offensively like they were last night, it's not like Maryland is loaded with scores. I mean, this team's reached 70, more than 70 once in their last 10 ball games. I mean, they're not an offensive juggernaut type of team, although the pace they play at is a little bit different from that of the Bruins. So I can understand why we're seeing some support for Belmont. We have seen teams come out of that play-in game, and all of a sudden they got a little bit of momentum under their belt, and boom, they go on and win a game or two over the course of the weekend. So I'm not surprised at all that Belmont took the early minor today. They were a wise guy choice last night. They were a wise guy choice right now, especially with the fact you talked about this Terps team that, wasn't great down the stretch and didn't play particularly good basketball. But from a spot standpoint, I really worry about this game from Belmont. Look, I understand it's a relatively short travel. They only have to go to Jacksonville off a plane last. But they played the late game last night, and now they're playing the early game, afternoon action in Jacksonville on Thursday. This isn't a tournament spot where you get to finish, a conference tournament where you finish the game, you go back to your hotel and you rest. This is balls to the wall. Oh, get on a plane, go fly, and now you got to 1 day to prep. And not even a full day to prep for your opponent. So I really worry about the situation here for Belmont more than I worry about the talent disparity. Now, Maryland's got a ton of talent, but they are a very young team.
Yeah, no, and it's definitely cause for concern. But, Teddy, we've seen it every year, or not every year, but it seems like a lot of years anyway, the winner of this play-in game actually plays pretty well in the round one, and a lot of times I remember VCU made a heck of a run, and they do come from Dayton, and then I'm guessing they fly into Nashville, probably stay a night, and then fly from Nashville to Jacksonville. Not the most terrible travel situation in terms of I guess the route, but you're right in terms of time. It's definitely not an easy one, but as far as the play-in games teams do faring fairly well in round one. How much do you factor that in from past years?
Well, the 11-6 seeds, the 11 seeds have done fairly well. The 16 seeds, obviously, not so much.
Yeah.
When it comes to the play-in games. But no, that's what I was saying in the analysis. I was talking about it. How we've seen teams that play the play-in game get some momentum and move forward. Not all of them, but enough that we say, yeah, you better keep your eye on Belmont. Look. Belmont is capable of reaching a Sweet 16. All right. They have that level of capacity on that squad, that level of ability. But I do worry about the early start. I would like them a lot more if they're playing on Thursday night instead of Thursday afternoon.
Teddy, if I give you a free bet on a 1, 2, or 3 seed losing on Thursday or Friday in round one, would you say yes, one of them will lose, or no, one of them won't lose?
Even money?
Yep.
I'll say one of them will lose.
Nice. All right. Yeah. So what? You get
I'll say that. I mean, and again, when you look at the point spreads, I mean, obviously last year you had the craziness with Maryland, Baltimore County beating Virginia, and it was no sweat if you had that proposition. But I don't necessarily expect the one seeds to go down this time around. You look at the twos and particularly the threes, man, there's some short point spreads, which are telling you that some of these dogs, they expect to be competitive, like Yale, who's a 14 seed over LSU as a 3. That's certainly one that stands out, but there's not the only one that stands out. Some of these numbers are short, Montana, Michigan short, relatively short when you think about what a lot of these point spreads can look like at this time of year. So yes, I say one, 2, or 3 seed loses, maybe more, but free bet at even money, I'll take one big upset in the opening 2 days of the big dance.
All right, we got 2 games left. We got Florida versus Nevada up next, and guys, remember the coupon code COVERS.
Georgia State, that's the other one. What do you think of Georgia State?
I don't know much about him, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I was. The Houston, in my mind, Houston is one of those teams I could see him in the Final Four. I could see him getting knocked off in the first round as another 3 seed that could be potentially vulnerable. Sorry, you were talking, and I'm getting all excited.
No, it's good, man. This is Georgia State Panthers, GSU, from Atlanta in the Sun Belt. I just don't know a lot about him this year. Ron Hunter, we all remember him, and he tore his Achilles or whatever, jumping around. So who knows? They could make a run themselves. But we got next game up, Teddy, a good one. Fascinating matchup here. I know a lot of people have opinions on it both ways. I've heard a lot of differing opinions. We got it a 6:50 Eastern tip on Thursday. Florida, Nevada, this one on TNT. Looks like 133.5 the total, with the Wolfpack laying a short number, just -2 here, Teddy.
I hate making fun of people. Oh, no, I don't. I love making fun of people. But, I mean, the one, Jay Billis, he just makes me nuts. He just, but the thing that cracked me up, he wrote one of these, I'm going to predict every tournament game, the articles on ESPN. And he's like, well, I'm picking Nevada to upset Florida. And he's like, I know they're the lower seed, or that Florida's the higher seed, and I know that Nevada's a point spread favorite, but it's still an upset if they win. I'm like, you don't understand the definition of upset. When you're the lower seed, or you're the 7th seed, and the other team's the 10, and you're the favorite, and you win the game, it's not called an upset. Oh, man.
I'm with
so
you,
much
Teddy.
bad gambling info out there. All right. All that being said, this really is a fascinating game. There's 2 schools of thought on Nevada. Okay, both these teams, by the way, had won games in the tournament last year. Both suffered really tough defeats. Nevada, the 1-point loss to the Loyola Chicago Ramblers on Loyola's magical trip to the Final Four with Sister Jean. They had a 1-point loss in the Sweet 16 in that game. And
how did Florida lose? I forget.
They lost to Texas Tech by 3 in it's a barn burner, a battle, and they came up short at the end. I mean, both these teams had a wins last year and then lost a brutal one. This is going to be this game has war written all over it. And look, I talked earlier about it. I mean, I really thought the SEC was better than they've been in recent seasons, much better than they've been. And I don't give Florida. I don't hate that squad because they ended up losing some tough games down the stretch. That OT loss to LSU, for example. They lost 4 of their last 6, including the loss to Auburn, though they covered the number against Auburn in that ball game. But you say, here's Florida. They lost a game despite the fact they're shooting 60% from the floor in that contest. That's a concern because Nevada, the one thing they do, and they do it very, very well, they light it up. This team has NBA talent. Multiple NBA prospects for Eric Musselman and company, and they can light up the scoreboard. A lot of shooters on this squad, no question. That being said, the Gators play pretty nasty defense, and they've done it all year, and it's been a Nevada squad that they haven't just been overvalued. They've been way overvalued for months right now, and you worry about the fact that they played, this wasn't a good year for the Mountain West by any stretch of the imagination. So Nevada's been beaten up on the weak for months and months and months, and now you're stepping up in class against a much stronger squad. I think the point spread's cheap, and if I free bet for this game, I would lay with Nevada, but my level of confidence in that wager is not strong. So it's one that will stay in the lean category, not in the bet category.
Yeah, it's a fascinating matchup for all the points you brought up. And Teddy, Nevada's doesn't really have a true point guard either. I don't necessarily like that aspect of this Nevada team. Yeah,
but when you're talking about NBA caliber talent, you have multiple guys who can drive and dish. They're not a catch and shoot team. They're our guys can create offensively for ourselves team, which is a very different. You don't see that a lot in the college game.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and that's why it's a tough one, man. With the Florida defense versus that Nevada, like you just said, next level talent. It's going to be a good one to watch. One of the more fascinating matchups. We got one more here, Teddy. And guys, I do want to throw out the coupon code again. We got covers 199 at checkout for Teddy's 30-day all access college basketball, all of March Madness, NBA, AAF, and MLB. You'll get every play he releases for just $199 for the next 30 days, too, using covers 199 at checkout. St. Mary's versus Villanova, Teddy, 130 the total. We got Nova laying 4.5. You talk about tough travel spots. St. Mary's having to go 3 time zones. Villanova only having to go a little over 3 hours. This is a travel spot. How much does it matter? Short number. Villanova laying 4.5, Teddy.
Yeah, and all the money's come for the Gale so far, which is something of a surprise because normally what you see in these tournament settings is the markets really react to travel situations. And with St. Mary's flying across the country and Nova taking a bus ride there, obviously advantage to the kids from Philly. Throw in the fact that Nova is the defending champs, and you're perhaps a little bit surprised and again, Nova with the Big East tournament victory, where it wasn't pretty, Xavier took them to overtime. They nearly choked it away, and certainly from a point spread perspective, they did choke it away against Seton Hall in the final seconds, but they won the tournament, but for me, this handicap comes down to a couple of key questions. First, you do worry about the travel for St. Mary's. I watched the Gales play a couple times in the regular season, and I thought that they were a little bit soft. And I don't know if you remember, they went up to Gonzaga, the game where they and then it was probably back in January when I was trying to ride them a couple times. I'm like, this team, they're just not. Randy Bennett said, they were really young. He knew what he was going into to come into the campaign. But I thought they weren't as tough, as mentally tough and as physically tough as some other St. Mary's teams I've seen in recent years. And when they got killed at Gonzaga, they lost that game by 50 points. And that came after I'd made that. I said, I got St. Mary's cemented now as a soft team. And then they, didn't cover point spreads after that. And then they went to the tournament. Obviously, the WC's tournament, and they, survived in advance against San Diego, a tough beat if you had Toreros in that one, and it came down to the wire. And then all of a sudden, in the final, they killed Gonzaga. Killed them. Wire to wire. Shut the Zags down. They gave up 98 to Gonzaga last time they played. They gave up 47 this time. So you have to ask yourself, was that St. Mary's good? Is that the team that's turned it around? Or is that Gonzaga just, the Zags had a brilliant game the night before. They killed Pepperdine. They hit every shot in that ball game. They covered his 24-point chalk. They had all the fans. Was it the Zags just letting down? They didn't care. They had their bid. They had their number 1 seed. Or was it St. Mary's doing something right? That's your handicap here. If it's St. Mary's doing something right, yeah, you can make a case for this team even 3,000 miles away from home. Nova's not winning the national championship this year. But if, in fact, it was just the Zags letting down and the Gales are the same soft team that they were for most of the campaign, well, then Nova's pretty live. One thing, when you look at St. Mary's recent defensive numbers, they are phenomenal. They are scary good. Nova, they're a team that relies heavily on the three-point shot. And if St. Mary's gets out and defends those three-pointers, might not be all that easy for the Wildcats to defend their title with a first-round win in this one.
Teddy, can you give us a double-digit seed most likely to make the Sweet 16?
Double-digit seed most likely. I could give you one.
But you're not.
It's funny because, St. Mary's probably goes on that list. If St. Mary's can beat Nova, they can beat Purdue. They could. Wouldn't shock me in the slightest. So that's one that if they can survive in advance, maybe a team like New Mexico State, they could be the sleeper this year. It's a 12 seed. They're nothing but money for the Aggies against the Tigers in that. And then they'll have the Kansas Northeastern winner in round 2 up in Salt Lake City. Maybe New Mexico State's a team to keep your eye on in that regard.
All right. And anything else you want to throw out as far as maybe some tidbits, some betting advice, betting March Madness?
Well, one thing that's really important, is pace yourself. When you have action morning, noon, and night, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And in my opinion, the very best bets, I've got one big ticket up for the opening round games and one 4-star. 4 percenter, I should say. Over the weekend, we might have more than that. You see some really good bets present themselves Saturday and Sunday. So don't blow your bankroll Thursday and Friday before the best stuff comes up. There will be some really good money-making opportunities this weekend. I'm counting on it.
All right. Yeah, it's a fun time to be a sports bettor like we talked about. And guys, the coupon code is COVERS199 at checkout for his 30-day all access for $199. He's got his 5% big ticket opening round game up at sportsmemo.com. He's got an Oregon-Wisconsin ticket, early money, Kansas State, Cal, Irvine, Marquette versus Murray State. That's the 4%er Teddy was talking about. It's all up here. He's got a tremendous trifecta. 3 plays there in one package. Wake up and win tourney money there. So a lot on Teddy Cover's page. He's hitting 27 and 13, 68% all sports this month. That's 68% in March. 22 and 8, 73% NBA since February 12th. 64% in March hoops this month. So all the numbers looking good for Teddy. He's seeing it well. Guys, it's a great time to jump on his service. Covers 199 at checkout for his 30-day all-access service. Gets it to you for $199. Retail price for $325. So great deal there. Covers 199 at checkout. Thanks, Teddy, for the time. Best of luck with your bets this weekend. Best of luck with everybody's bets out there. We'll be back talking Brent Crow with more March Madness tournament betting action.